I'm Sonia Lennon.
And I'm Brendan Courtney, and you're listening to Lennon Courtney Left Alone with Guests.
For this series, we'll be joined by incredible women each week to share their insights with us on equity, diversity and inclusion.
For today's episode, we're talking to autism advocate Roisin Kelly.
Roisin says that schools segregating neurotypical able-bodied children and neurodivergent disabled people and those with additional needs is denying all our children a rounded and enriched education. This is Lennon Courtney Left Alone with guest Roisin Kelly.
Okay, internet sensation, Roisin Kelly. How are you?
Just call me Kim Kardashian.
That'll do. So you didn't do a dance. You didn't do a makeup tutorial.
I know.
You didn't do a wardrobe haul. We need a little bit of context. How are you sitting in that chair talking to us this Friday?
Well, I suppose one of the things that I would have used my Instagram for in the last few years, well, since my son was diagnosed as autistic, was to kind of connect with people, families who have autistic children, autistic people themselves. Certainly, I find that the support that you get from autistic adults and autistic teenagers is so useful because it's their lived experience. So that's what I've been using my Instagram for, and also repeal rants and all sorts of
all the good stuff.
So
tell us a little bit about your family as they are.
So I have two boys. One is neurotypical and one is neurodivergent. And Dexter is the neurotypical one, and he is 9. And Arlo is autistic, and he has a moderate learning disability, and he is 6. So Arlo was diagnosed quite young. He was diagnosed at 2.5, which we had to do privately, as so many people do. That's another day's conversation, I think. And he's non-speaking at the moment. And if that's the way he is forever, that's fine too. But he's an excellent communicator. He uses picture exchange communications. He's currently in a gorgeous preschool, which caters specifically to his needs. And he's due to start in a autism class in September, which I shouldn't have to say my child is lucky to have a place in school in September, but we are very, very lucky. We're lucky that it's close to our house. We were offered a place that is 26 kilometres from our house, which is ridiculous when I live in South County Dublin. So, but we found one that is now like a 10-minute drive, 20-minute walk, which is beautiful. So we're absolutely thrilled about that. The relief of that, because we were years waiting to find out if he would have a school placement. He's actually probably too old to be in the preschool setting that he's in, because he's 6.5, like he'll be 7 in October. But we just thought, rather than sending him 26 kilometres away from where he lives, we'd rather he did an extra year in the setting that he's in. And it was the best choice that we made. And certainly because of COVID and all that, they're amazing. So that's where he is. He's starting in September. It's going to be an adjustment for all of us, I think, but he's so well prepared for it. And I'm so excited for him because I know it's a beautiful school. The principal is amazing. She had a class, one class. Now, bearing in mind the classes, autism classes are small, so you have 6 children in the class. And she had been fighting for a long time to get the second class put in place, and eventually got it sorted, and gave me a call in December. And I cried, I think, for 4 days because the relief was so palpable. I don't think we realized how stressed and how worried we were. And also that the way she spoke about the class and the way she spoke about autistic children and just the joy and the benefits to the entire school, that was just so lovely to hear. She didn't have a gun held to her head to open that class. She did it because she felt it was the best thing for the whole school. And it was just stunning. So
and
I cried.
that brings us into your internet rant the other night, which was really good, really eloquent,
diatribe,
very entertaining as well. I have to say, you have a great turn of phrase. And I watched you in bed. Somebody sent it to me, and
your bed, not my bed. I wasn't in bed.
We watched it together. You flirt. No, so I hadn't ever considered the inclusive nature of your description, for developing the empathy of other children.
Yeah.
Would you explain that? Because that blew my mind. And we're, as we told you earlier, we're doing a master's in equality, diversity, inclusion. This for me is another level of inclusivity, and it's amazing.
Well, I personally feel like we've been coming at this wrong, you know, for so long, that we've just been othering disabled children and autistic children, and saying, that's the problem now we're going to have to resolve over there. And it's very sad. And the whole, you know, as I said, the talk to Joe Duffy thing, like, nobody wants to do that. But we've been coming at it only from that angle. You know, we're as I had said in my Instagram stories, there had been an incident in the playground, and it was a very upsetting incident. And after the upset kind of left, I realized that Arlo was completely unaffected by that incident. But it was all those other children, and they were being small children. But there was also this, you know, children are cruel. I'm like, no, they're not. Children are not born cruel. Children are just unsure how to behave around something that they don't understand. And there's, so when they're not understanding of it, they laugh, they're hysterical, whatever, you know, and it's all. And once the upset settled, I was actually, hang on a minute, they're missing out a massive chunk of learning here. And I'm not saying that my child is a learning opportunity for other children either, but children will learn from each other, you know. And as I said in the stories, Dexter, my eldest son, like, the empathy that comes out of that child is incredible. And I can categorically tell you it's because he has an autistic brother. And he sees differences, and he's very accepting, and he's very kind. Now, he's a little sometimes as well, but you know, he's not Mother Teresa like, but he just has a very natural empathy, you know. And I was like, do you know what? These children are really missing this. They're missing that access to empathy, because you can sit down and have the conversations about being kind to everybody, and you know, make sure you include them, and then we'll invite them to the birthday party and all those kind of, you know, that tokenism. But actually, that's not really correct. And I suppose the word inclusive has just become this thing about, let's invite them in. Like, you're inviting other humans into a human scenario. The cheek of you, you know. How dare you?
I'm fascinated by this, Roisin, because I think you've really come to the absolute nub of how we drive this conversation forward. And I don't know if you're aware, but there is a kind of an emergent fourth pillar to equity, diversity, inclusion, and it's belonging.
Yeah.
And belonging is really, you know, I always say, you know, even a victim is included in a bully's behavior. Inclusion in itself is not necessarily a good thing. You can be negatively included. So this sense of belonging, I have a right to be here, I think is very interesting. And I think that's really at the core of your argument.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, I suppose, like, I would tie it back to, like, one of the conversations that came out, for example, to the whole Black Lives Matter thing. It was like inviting Black people and people of color into your workplace. And what? That's not recruitment. That's like, now there you go. And I feel a very similar thing about, you know, inviting disabled people, and especially children, because it's denying everybody a human right to a whole education, you know, not just the maths and the English and the Gaeilge, like everything. Like, I got Dexter's school report the other day, and there's quite a heavy focus on social interaction. You know, it's not just the Drumcondra tests, you know, it's like always plays with other children, always considers other children. I'm like, but there's no sort of empathy there, do you know? And not that I'm saying empathy should be an exam in the Leaving Cert, but like, it's just a natural thing that develops when you see it and when you're around it. Like, say, for example, Arlo would be very much a sensory seeking autistic child. So his stimming is very exciting, you know.
And
Now,
there's
I think you need to explain stimming to people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So stimming is it's like a self-regulatory behavior that autistic people, I hate the word behavior, the things they do to regulate, to process. Like if an autistic person has a particularly stressful time of something, they will use some stimming to regulate, but they will also use it when they're happy. And they
So it
will
could
use
take the form of humming or clicking or anything.
Anything.
A repetitive action.
Yeah. And again, I'm also very conscious, I don't want to talk about autistic people because it's the whole nothing for us without us thing. And I'm very conscious of that. So, but I suppose just to explain the stimming is important. But so Arlo's stimming would be very spinny. He would be quite loud. He's, as I say, it's very exciting. And some children in playgrounds are
It's a bit like working with Brendan, to be honest with you, Roisin.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of leg tapping. And so it's something that he does that other children, neurotypical children, don't understand. And so they're kind of a little bit, what is that? Whereas if they were seeing that every day in school, that just becomes a thing that happens. Do you know what I mean? So instead of kind of just going, well, now here, we're going to explain Arlo's stimming to you, and now you're going to understand it. And forevermore, you'll be great with autistic people. Just, we'll all be in there together. And we're all our behaviors and all the things that we do are just the things that we do, as opposed to something very different that we all need to talk about over the dinner table.
Do you think, I think as Sonia said, there's a nub in here of gold, real gold, about how inclusivity could work properly in a society. But do you think other parenting styles could be a barrier to this? As in, I don't know, even the way our education system is set up, achievement, up the ladder, which is based then on class, isn't it? It's based on where you're from, and it's based on who you hang out with, and it's
100%.
So how do you start to, I suppose, dissect that, break it down, and bring it back to basics?
Well, I think, and this is an excellent point, and it's something that I feel quite strongly about. The whole education system is really geared towards one type of child, right? And they talk about how the Irish education system is excellent. No, the Irish education system is excellent for one type of child, right? And so what we're creating is just, a nation of corporate bankers, right? Like whereas if you're a creative person, or if you are a musical person, any of those things, I mean, we're looking at teenage mental health and, the suicide rates and all that. And we're not tying it back into the fact that so many children don't feel they belong in the place that they are from 9 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. every day. That's massive to me.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about what the logistic of an integrated education system could look like, because
Very simple.
It's funny because my sister is a teacher, and I think there is an element of sort of concern around how we can do this for everybody's benefit.
It's not complicated. It's kind of like the homeless crisis, right? If you listen to Peter McVerry and Sister Stan and the Simon community, they'll have the homeless problem sorted like that, right? So if you listen to autistic people, if you listen to families who have an autistic child or a disabled child of any description, they will tell you the problem is with the education system. It's been run by people who have no involvement in the education system. You know what I mean? So you have the NCSE, which is the National Council for Special Education, and any person that has dealings with them will tell you they are a massive stumbling block here, massive. That's not just my own personal experience with them, which has been horrific. And the teachers, the principals, they will consistently tell, and it's because they are not involved in the disabled community. So they don't know, right? And there's no communication there. So you have the NCSE, then you have the Department of Education, and then you have the schools. And then outside of that sort of trilogy are the families. But actually you need to bring the families and the communities in there to that discussion. And they will tell you the best way to run the education system that is properly inclusive.
Well, do you know what? I want to get down into the weeds with this a little bit more and see what this actually looks like. But let's take a quick break first. So you spoke about the situation where Arlo has a classroom of 6 within a typical educational setting. Is that the way to do this?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I mean, all autistic children would have a different profile, right? I mean, some of them will be autistic, some of them will be autistic with a learning disability, some will be autistic and have Down syndrome. So like, it's a plethora of profiles. So obviously there isn't a sort of one thing suits all. But if you create the accommodations in the school that suit everybody, that's sort of it. Do you know what I mean? So you'll have your wheelchair access, you'll have your autism classes, you'll have a sensory room. These are not like very expensive things to run, and the funding is there. And one of the biggest problems is that the communication between the NCSE, the department, and the schools themselves is very disjointed. So the schools are afraid that they're going to lose an SNA from their mainstream allocation, but they're not. That's not happening. They'll get their additional SNAs. Then they're afraid that they're going to have, there's also the module within teacher training for special education, which is a term I'm really not mad about, but anyway, is very small. So you have to actually do further education. So you're actually teaching teachers to only teach one type of child. So instead of including that additional education module as par for the course, so every teacher comes out of teacher training college knowing what to do if they go into an additional educational environment. That's not difficult either, right? Do you know what I mean? These are just simply things that just have to happen in the morning.
Do you think I'm just getting a sense of the way you're describing things that are almost like you're just about to flick the switch on this, I think. Do you think there's a movement behind you of families going, okay, things need to change?
Listen, there is a massive movement way ahead of me. You know, I mean, I am involved with this because of Arlo, but when it became very obvious that the school system was tricky, I got involved with a group called Involve Autism. Now, they are specifically for Dublin 6 West, but they're very generous with their time. They're excellent at gathering statistics. And they're just a brilliant advocacy group, and they will knock on any door and they will talk to anybody. So I certainly feel like I would be standing with them on this, you know, and there's parents all over the country. So like some parents like me, I will take to my Instagram stories. I'll talk to anybody. I don't care. But not everybody has that available to them for whatever reason, you know. So if I'm sitting here in my nice little middle class house in South County Dublin ranting on Instagram stories in the middle of the day, not everybody has that time. And so what happens with their children? So like the way advocacy works in that community, in the autism family community, as opposed to the autistic community, is that you're advocating for all of the children. Like up until say about 3 years ago, any campaigns were focused on one child. One child needs a place in a school out here.
Yes.
Do you know? But now the movement is more towards bringing all of the children into the conversation, because who's advocating for the children whose parents don't have it available to them?
I do get the impression that, you know, the whole area of neurodivergence has a marketing problem. You know, that it's almost like we need to completely flip our thinking around every member of our society in terms of how we can be better as a society and as an economy by being equitable for all, but also by understanding what we can gain. And I think there was a big piece of research launched recently about the specific brain patterns of autistic people and how they have a really innovative force around their thinking, and that can be very powerful and very valuable. So I think we haven't to this date been looking at the positives of autism and what it can bring to us. Maybe as a parent, yes, but not as a wider society.
Well, I've two kind of thoughts on that. One is that, yes, you know, obviously autistic people have lots to offer, but there is that whole sort of Rain Man savant kind of thing where, you know, autistic people are super at this. No, because they're human beings. Do you know what I mean? So they're as flawed or they're as brilliant as any human being. So, and again, I feel like I'm really othering it. And even by talking about it in that respect, like I would say, if you wanted to kind of delve into that conversation, you would talk to an autistic person. You know, like
Yes.
I'm just a mother of an autistic person. So like you say Adam Harris, for example, I mean, like I've been in rooms with Adam Harris where people are literally just blown away by him. But Adam would be very quick to tell you that that's his profile, right? So he's one autistic person and that's his profile. And like obviously, like Arlo, my son, has a moderate learning disability as well. So chances are he's not going to grow up and be Adam Harris. You know, he's non-speaking, you know, so there's a very different sort of, autistic people are people.
Yeah, so I think that's part of your message, that people are people, and some people are autistic, and some people have blonde hair, and I think that's your message. That's very interesting. There's something I'm dying to tell you, but I want to ask you about the importance of language, and I think the one thing we've learned in the course is what Irish people, I suppose because we have a dismissive nature around language, because this is not originally our first language and our parents dismissed it a little bit, but the power of language, it is actually really important. What you say is hugely important. And actually, to be honest, I only learned that in my late 30s, early 40s. I didn't, even though I'm gay, I decided that if people used negative words around me, they were right. I don't care. I don't care what they say, because they were trying to be negative towards me and I was out and I didn't care what they said. So, but now I really think as you try to be inclusive across a broader society, language is key. So
language it's huge.
Yeah.
It's
so
huge.
Even before this conversation, before we were talking about how do we refer to autistic people? And it's autistic people, not people with autism, right? Yeah. I think that's a real nice little nugget for people to learn. And I think we should always strive to educate, you know?
The only thing about that, Bren, I think you have to be careful that that nomenclature is not one size fits all across different sectors as well. So there are different, say, disabilities or whatever that
totally
don't. So some, you would say, I have Down syndrome. I am not Down syndrome, you know? So that's the one thing that we learned, Bran, is that there's no playbook for everything, that it's about communicating, openness, curiosity, respect, empathy, all of those things in a big mixing bowl, and to be open to know what's right and to be vulnerable enough to say you don't know, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a very simple solution to the question around language, and that is to ask the communities what is their preferred language, right? So there's no point in asking me. I say, when Arla was first diagnosed, I said with autism, because that's what the professionals, the psychologists, the speech and language therapists, that's what they were telling me. But as the time passed and I started learning more from autistic people, that's when I started to change my language. And what really kind of irritated me was this kind of, but does it matter when at least we're talking about it? Well, no, absolutely it matters, because if language didn't matter, we'd still be using the N word. And do you know what I mean? So, and as language evolves and connotations are attached to words, which is why people are starting to move away from the special needs phrase, is because there are connotations attached to it now. You know,
but I think
still be using the or word, and you know,
I think it's
moves
important
and evolves
to have these conversations so people who are not involved but have influence, teachers, siblings, aunts and uncles.
Yeah.
What happens is if we EDI master students like Sonia and I go, well, you should know. How would you know? You have to have the conversation, right? And that's really important.
And that is down to the people at the core of it saying, okay, well, I've checked with the community. I mean, you'd be amazed the amount of people who check me on my language, right? And I have the link from the National Autistic Society in the UK. They did a massive survey, and the preferred language among the autistic community, which is autistic people as opposed to their mas and their das, is autistic person. So condition first.
Roisin, there's something I'm dying to tell you, and I think you like it. But you remember Jason Gardner, the evil judge on Dancing on Ice, that On Ice ITV show? He's a judge on it anyway, and he's a theatre lovey. along with a family of an autistic person, have set up this charity called Quiet Performance, and they ask West End shows to do once a month a quiet performance for
lovely, yeah.
autistic kids. Isn't that just the cutest thing ever? And he was like, I'd love to bring it to Ireland, but I said, well, we have to wait till COVID passes now, obviously, to open. But it's a cute
Now, again,
isn't it?
it's gorgeous, right? But it's also assuming that all autistic people are sensory avoiding.
That's what I wanted to ask you, right? So,
like, if you put, like, Arlo is the most sensory seeking person I've ever met in my life. Arlo can literally move for 20 hours a day. Like, if he's not had a good night's sleep, he can walk, flap, 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 click fingers. Noise doesn't bother him. You know, all of those things that we would typically associate, because we have this one idea of what an autistic person looks like based on Hollywood or what we've seen on the telly. And there's that they would, you know, shy away from this. And one day he might, but most of the time he's sensory seeking. So that is a lovely idea, right? And it's an inclusive, but it also is catering for a very specific subset, a person with a specific sensory profile.
Okay, so if you had a magic wand, there's 3 things you could change. What are they? I think you've kind of said them though, but
yeah, well, I mean, straight away, I would say that all children would have access to an appropriate education within their community, whatever that is.
And within the mainframe of the education system.
I wouldn't even I would also like to, with my second one would be that education would be just education. There wouldn't be special education. There wouldn't be, we wouldn't be breaking it up into these little groups. Education would be education, and it would suit everybody. So there would be accommodations for all people, all children. So that would be my second one. And my third one would probably be have a Botox technician in place.
You're allowed to have a little bit for yourself now, Roisin, in fairness.
Thanks very much. I'm no martyr, Sonia.
Roisin, it's been absolutely fascinating to hear your story, and more than your story, your perspective on this, because I think it's so refreshing. And I think having these conversations allows us to understand the nuances. But before we wrap it up, we need to bring in our own savant, Esther Donohoe, who is unmuted in preparation for Esther's question.
I couldn't let it slide. Can you hear me? I have unmuted myself.
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't let it slide. I've been a long time follower of Roisin, first time Zoomer, so it is nice to meet you on the Zoom. Roisin, I've tapped through your face, I've slid through your stories many times, but I have a comment and a question. I think it's really interesting with your stories of the night, in the same way you talk about the Black Lives Matter movement, the idea of white supremacy. And there is this kind of, that's like the baseline, and that we're bringing people in, Black people in. I think it's interesting thinking of like a neurotypical brain as being the supreme kind of baseline, and that it's great that we should have all the different paintbrushes that everyone can just seamlessly access whatever they need. So that congratulations on that. So it was it really made me think about it in different ways. You're correct. Anyway, so what I want to say is, what can people do then? You kind of said at the end of your story that people follow. What can people do if they have neurotypical children and they want to see that mix and that inclusiveness in their local school and area?
Well, I mean, you need to lobby, right? So you need to kind of get involved, not involved, because that people go, I don't want to get involved, I'm sick of it. And that's fair enough. But you need to approach your parents.
What can I do from my bed? Yeah, what can I do from my bed?
I really don't want to be involved in the school.
Yeah,
that's the kids.
Yeah.
But you need to talk to the parents' associations, like a letter to the board of management, approaching the principals, or, nominate somebody within the parents' association to approach the principal, because they are kind of safeguarded like they're Barack Obama or something. It's like, here's a human. I want to talk to another adult human. Thank you. So it would be letters and just getting support, because I really, I do, like, I probably sounded a bit flippant the other day when I was talking about children growing up with a lack of empathy, but I really do feel that it's very important. Like, a lack of empathy, I think, is the root of evil, if you don't have it. So I think parents need to get concerned. And if you are concerned about something that is lacking in your child's education, what do? You go to the school. So I think that's basically the baseline there, is that's what they need to do. Approach their schools, why have you not got these autism classes or, you know, additional educational classes? I feel like, and why, or if you do, why is it so separated out? Like the perfect class, additional education class, it's like a drop-in center, you know, it's a revolving door so that the kids have access to the mainstream class when they're able for that, you know. It's not that you're going to have 6 kids in the same class every single day doing this and not seeing anybody else. It's an inclusive revolving door model, and ask why that's not happening. It's I mean, I'm concerned about it. I think I don't want to get political, but we are just raising young Fine Gaelers, and I just don't think that's.
Careful what you wish for, Roisin. I think you've designed yourself a little job. I think you're going to get a little DM from a few people now looking to head up a posse of some sort anyway. But listen, it's been a pleasure. Pleasure. And
thank you so much.
We'll be watching closely and consider us allies now at this stage.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, because it's just get it out there as much as we can, and bring the autistic community into the conversation as well. As I am, I just really want to say they are doing amazing work. And I think without them, the outlook from my perspective, what flipped the switch for me was going to a seminar held by As I Am. And I was like, this is not doom and gloom. There is no tragic slant to my child's life now. This is amazing. It's very positive. They're an amazing organization. So just wanted to get that in.
Well done.
Done.
Fabulous.
Thank you. We're so grateful to Roisin Kelly for taking time out to talk to us today.
We know we always say it, but make sure you subscribe to Lennon Courtney Left Alone wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an issue.
For all the latest updates on Lennon Courtney at Dunnes Stores, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and of course, YouTube.
Katie Laffan created and performed our theme music. Krushka Kotian is our social media strategist, and our producer and question asker is Esther Donohoe.
We love you all. Until next Thursday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.